Hello. So, this video is for those who are watching, who have come to know this recognition that I talk about, this initial shift in perspective, this initial shift out the way from the confined and enclosed, time-based, separated narrative self, constructed from thought, and shifted out into something unknowable, which inherently knows itself, is self-knowing. And there are many ways we can frame this. Pardon me. Sorry. We can frame this recognition in words, but if this recognition has come about, you'll know what I'm talking about. That which I'm talking about, which isn't a thing, that doesn't have to make sense, that isn't bound by concepts, the very essence of existence. But to frame it in words, initially we feel separate, we feel like we are something in here, in this body, in this head, in this mind. Something solid here, separate from the rest of the world, living in the head, identified with narrative. And that's what we feel ourselves to be. I am this self that worries about the future, that thinks about how my life is going, so on and so on. We just assume that we are a self, this entity is real. And then we explore that a little bit. We explore the nature of what am I? Where is this me that I'm always referring to in these thought narratives? Where is it? Let's go and look for it and find it. We turn our attention inward. And this recognition comes about that I'm not my thoughts. What I took myself to be was just a thought, an object in consciousness, or a series of thoughts or narratives, an assumption, a felt assumption. And come to recognise what is primary to what we take ourselves to be. And that, people call it many things, it which isn't a thing, it which really is the only thing that's not a thing, that can't be confined or labelled or objectified, seemingly. You call it awareness or beingness or presence, present awareness, present beingness, aware existence. You might call it aware space, self-knowingness. It's not so much a thing, but more a happeningness. People refer to it as the I am, the sense of I am, the felt, lived sense. We consciously connect with I am, I exist, I am alive. There's this intelligence, this intelligent knowingness, is infinite, is omniscient, that in which all of this story of the self, all of this appears within, seemingly. But there's not really a within there, because it encompasses everything. There's no outside. Infinite. Whatever that is that I just tried to explain with all those words is what I'm referring to. The point from which we're looking, the point from which we know thoughts, that is what we are, and it's not a thing. We find that we're not a thing, and what we are can never be defined, categorized, specified, because it's too free, and we get in touch with that expanse of freedom. And as a result, our identity shifts out from this individual separated self, this idea that we never fully examined because we were too caught up in the content of life and thoughts. And we realise that what I am isn't this person. And there's an enormous release, an enormous remembering, it seems like, an obvious recognition of course, the search. I've been searching my whole life for something, and this is it. Is what I am anyway. So for those who have had this recognition, and you'll know what I'm talking about, there's this massive, infinite sense of, you can't even call it a sense of self, but you shifted out of the self into something that using self and identity doesn't do it justice. But there's that space, that opening, that openness, that present aware openness. And then within that present aware openness, using that as a conduit, let's say, then there's the investigation of, what is this? Now I've recognised myself, I recognised my nature, my natural essence, inherent. What am I? What is this? Because there's still a world out there. And now I have the sense that this world is a manifestation of me. A manifestation of... I'm framing it in identity because it's easier to talk about that way. This world is a manifestation of my nature. And this investigation of the senses begins. So this is where I've tried to describe this many times, and this is where, I say this all the time, this is where it stops making sense to the mind. After this recognition, there'll be a sense of mystery and deep satisfaction in the senses, but there will still be a visceral physical sense of me looking at the world from here, seemingly. A visceral sense of this body is separate, this body is a body, and this world is a world. It's solid and separate to a degree. But for me, there was, I described this at the beginning, an expansive yet contained feeling, sense. It's in the whole of my experience became more vast, but at the same time it became smaller, it became more contained, because I recognised myself in it. I recognised it for what it is, which isn't a thing over there, at a subtle level. And there was that sense of it. But then there's still an assumption in the mind of subject and object, of I am the subject here, observing that which is over there, which is inherently separate from me. So there are people who are better at explaining this than I am. So if anyone's ever heard of Rupert Spira, he's a non-duality speaker, and he describes it. Let me see if I can get this vaguely right, or I'll just paraphrase the whole thing. He kind of describes it in the sense that, imagine you're dreaming, and inside the dream you dream yourself as a separate character in that dream, but whatever you're looking at in the dream is in your mind, the one who's asleep. So in a sense, from that point of view of the separate character, you're looking at yourself, the inside of your dream, the inside of your mind all the time. Nothing within that world, dream world, is separate from you, the dreamer. So it's like one universal, unified mind. You could say that's what you are, which is not a thing. But to use a mental model, I thought that was quite a good one. But within these senses, we start to notice things. Say we recognise ourselves as that, which I used all those words to try and describe at the start, the dreamer, the awareness, the intelligence in which all of this appearance is manifest. So where are you, awareness? This present aware intelligence, where are you? Because you're not in this body. Where is awareness aware? Can it be located? Where does awareness start and stop? Begin and end? So we can do it with the sounds. So where is the awareness and where is the sound, or is it one? Is the sound the awareness? Can we separate the awareness of the sound from the sound? Is there a one who is aware and the sound? Can the sound exist without the one who's hearing it? Can the object exist without the subject? Can either the subject or the object, that which hears in the sound, exist on their own? Or are they entirely dependent on each other? And if they are, would that not mean that the subject and the object are concepts which aren't applicable? They're one. The relationship is an illusion. It's just one. The sound is the hearer. The sound is the awareness. The awareness is the sound. Can we find any evidence in our experience other than thought that that's not the case? With the visual, with the sight, where is awareness? Am I aware of this? What's seen here? Or am I aware of it over there? Or both, or neither? So where is awareness aware of that over there? Where am I? That's only there, over there, in relation to me over here. Where am I then? Can I locate myself? Without using thought, just in the experience? Does awareness know distance? Or is it instantaneous? Is it instant? What's the difference between the awareness that is aware of this over there and the awareness that is aware of that in the distance. Is there distance in experience, or is that just a thought? And I say awareness, meaning what I was referring to that isn't a thing, that I talked about at the start with that recognition. We recognise ourselves as this, let's say for now, awareness. Present, conscious awareness. But there's no self in it, there's no identity in it, not in the same way at all as the mind would frame it. You get a sense of this weird unity, this weird still unity. Does awareness have to move? Does awareness move? Is awareness still? Can we start to see how these assumptions, these subtle thought-based assumptions, are augmented on top of the appearance? So I look at a car, my mind recognises instantly that's a white car there. An object with its own inherent existence, separate from its surroundings. I am looking at over there from this point, the centre point of view over here. Is there any of that? Does any of that exist in the immediate sense? It's so quick, the mind, to augment form onto something which is formless. To augment things onto something which isn't a thing. There's nothing. Nothing isn't the mind's idea of nothing. The mind can't think of nothing, like I said in the last video. The mind only deals in things, it can't go here. It can't even think about this. It can't be understood. And this is where the mind can be completely let go, and the division between separate things, subject and object, me as a physical separate self in this world, starts to thin out. And we can immediately see how it's not like that. We can immediately see how all of this is unified and inseparable. That white car over there, can I ever perceive that, see that, experience that separately, as separate from the totality of this sensory experience? Is it possible? It's never possible. You never see anything, experience anything separate. It's not possible. Isolated on its own. It's not possible. We test the limits, test the boundaries. Where is this vision? Where is the one who's seeing? Where does the sight begin and end? Where does the one who's seeing begin and end? Can that division be found? Is there a definitive border or separation between the sound and the sight? Or is it impossible to find such a thing? Where does the sight, the vision, start and end? Where are its limits of this visual field? Are there limits? Is there a definitive start point and end point to it? Or is it full immersion in one, let's say, sensory field of awareness? And we start to see that the person is lost in this. The person can't be found in this. It's not possible to find the person in this. It's too free, too unified. too free to be divided, too free to be whole. The mind can't object to this because there's nothing to object to. There's only this. We begin to see that, where are the thoughts? Can I find the thought? Can I find the division between thought and this visual experience? We can begin to become aware of, let's say, or there is some clarity on that function, that augmentation of the form integrated into and onto that which is appearing, this field of formless awareness. And then we can start to see what is actually there, and what is actually there isn't there or here or anywhere. It can't be located. It doesn't exist or not exist. It's completely paradoxical, completely mysterious, completely fascinating. And we see that it's not sameness. It's not even really oneness. That what this is too free to be a thing. Doesn't need to be divided into separate things, to have variety of expression, to have full freedom of expression. Doesn't need to move, doesn't need to be still. Doesn't need to exist, doesn't need to not exist. Doesn't need to come, doesn't need to go. Doesn't need to be anything or any certain way. Just the filters of the mind make it look a certain way due to conditions. And that's impossible to understand and doesn't need to be understood. Because what this is inherently understood anyway. It's a given. And any quest to try and understand it is just entertainment. Without thought, be aware of what a thought is and what is simply this, including the thoughts. Nothing can be found separate, nothing can be seen separately, unless we believe the thoughts. It's really that simple. It's immensely beautiful. In fact, beautiful doesn't even begin to describe it. It's infinitely fascinating. The infinite is the absence of distance and time, which also contains within it distance and time, but doesn't need to be bound by distance and time. And we can just disappear into this immense paradox, but at the same time continue to function in the relative world all the same. Just there's no holding on to anything. There's no need for things to be a certain way. There's no longing for something that's not this. It's just this. No need to figure something out and attain something. To obtain some metaphysical knowledge. Because all the knowledge is already there. But it also doesn't need to be there. This is where I go into talking in weird riddles and tongues of, like you hear sometimes in non-duality radical pointing videos. And I don't want to keep doing that because that's it's trying to find a way to explain something that doesn't need to be explained. It's taking away from this immediate, just this. But it's in the senses. Investigating it not with the mind, not looking for something. We're not looking for something. You can maybe see how the mind creates things. Creates a subject. But you see how flimsy that is compared to, let's say, reality. even though this non-dual reality doesn't even have its own reality. It doesn't need to have its own reality. The mind has its own reality, and that's the relative world. But non-dual reality doesn't need to be a certain way. And that's where the freedom is. Nothing's ever mundane again, nothing's ever boring again. It's the mind that wants to know, it wants to drop conclusions and say this is this and I know it. That's secure in my knowledge, but it's flimsy. It's based on flimsy assumptions that don't really make sense. We can see it doesn't have to make sense, because the certainty is in that this is here, this, and it's incredible. Where are you? Where is awareness? Where are the objects? In experience, not in the mind. If you were looking from a point, it would be like you were looking into a bizarre infinity. And infinite is impossible to describe, because it's not infinite in distance. It's not like you're seeing infinite distance. It's kind of like infinite closeness and distance. That expansive, contained feeling at the same time. Complete paradox. And it's everywhere. But it can't be found. It's unlocatable. It doesn't need to be anywhere. It's so strange. You can just get lost in this. Just go deeply into the getting lost in this, and there's no place to land, there's no conclusion, there's no end, there was never a beginning. Anyway, I need to go. I'll talk to you next time.